Hi, and welcome to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. Today, I want to talk about delegation and delegating your authority. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. I am Kale Houser. Thank you so much for joining me today. All right. We had previously talked a little bit about delegation as part of the How to Increase Morale in Your Organization and on Your Team series. I believe it was the fifth part of the series. And I want to talk about it a little bit further in depth today because it is an important part of building any sort of team. And this garnered an interesting comment on one of my Facebook posts specifically talking about delegation. And I kind of wanted, the point of the post was to help people understand that you have to have team members. You have to have people on your side. You have to have people that are willing to work for you and with you in order to be successful. You know, most businesses arguably start out as solopreneurs. You know, it's a single person that has an idea. They take all the risk, whatever that may be, and then they go out and try to make a business out of it. You know, and of course, certainly some businesses start as partnerships and things of that nature, but essentially they all start as small teams. And then as they grow, hopefully the ideal is their teams grow as well. And sometimes in order to grow, you have to grow the team first, right? So there's this little bit of, you know, cart before the horse, you know, wagon before the wheel type of thing where, you know, what comes first, the growth or the teams or the growth, and how that all kind of interplays. And that certainly is different for all kinds of different industries and how that plays out. But the important part to remember is you can't do anything on your own, and certainly not achieve long-lasting, massive greatness or success in the business world on your own. Very few people can do that, and I'd argue that nobody has done that. Even the people that you see are massive successful, and maybe they are the figurehead of their industry. You know, Elon Musk certainly comes to mind. He didn't do all of that on his own. He did not create SpaceX on his own. He did not create Tesla on his own, or PayPal, or any of those things. He built teams, and as part of that, the important thing to realize is he had to delegate authority. So you, as the leader of your team, at some point, you have to delegate authority to other people that are part of your teams in order to be successful. This should be a very straightforward thought as far as understanding the necessity of it, right? If you ever want to take vacation, somebody else has to manage your affairs for you while you're gone or out of the office, the day-to-days, all that kind of stuff, unless you've gone totally automated and you can just walk away anytime. But I want you to think about that this is a hard truth, that if you are a leader that does not delegate, then you are essentially saying, I do not trust you, you know, to your team members that do that. Or if you're the team, or if you're the leader and manager that doesn't have those expectations of when you delegate something, that you kind of leave it in their realm. You know, certainly you can verify. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, hey, Chuck, you know, you were supposed to get those numbers done or submitted to the IRS. Our taxes were supposed to be filed on the April 15th or 18th, whatever it is this year. You know, did that get done? Yeah, Bob, it sure did. I sent that off last week, blah, 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 right? So there's nothing wrong with verification, and that's not what I'm referring to here. I'm referring to somebody's unwillingness to delegate their authority to other people in order to get tasks done, which ultimately lead to growth. So one of the comments that was made, or really the comment that was made on the post when I talked about this concept of delegation, was the leader that delegates something, some task, some responsibility, but then gets upset when that task or responsibility or action item is not done exactly how they wanted it to. And this is certainly, and I've been victim to this before, and I've probably done this to other people. You know, I can think of my wife where I've kind of delegated some task and she didn't do it exactly how I wanted it to be done, and I got upset. And that is, while delegation in the sense of the word, that is delegating it, but there's a critical piece that's missing from that. And that is, especially as a leader, that's the training aspect of it. You can't just grab, you know, Bob off your team and say, hey, Bob, you need to do our taxes this year. I'm delegating this authority to you. Well, Bob is a line cook, right? Bob doesn't know anything about taxes. Bob doesn't care about taxes. He's not certified in it. And, certainly this is an extreme example. But the point being, you have done nothing to prepare Bob for that authority that you are imparting onto him, that you're delegating to him. So there is that assumed, and maybe it's a wrong assumption. Maybe it's an assumption I'm making out of my experience, but there's an assumption that as part of that delegation, there is a training aspect of it. There is a qualification side of that to where, hey, I'm delegating this authority to you, whether it be to hire or fire people, to make purchases, on behalf of the company, with the company credit card, all those things. And there's an assumption that, okay, because I'm doing that and giving that part of my authority to you, I have trained you how I expect this to be done, or the limits, the left and right limits of where that authority starts and stops. So I don't want to underestimate that or understate that, because it is a critical part of it. And I would argue when you get into that realm of a leader that has quote unquote delegated something to their team, and then they proceed to get upset when it's not done how they wanted it to, or in the time frame they wanted to, that goes back onto the leader, right? This is the whole point of this podcast, is to help leaders understand that when things like that happen, that's not your team member's fault. When you've given them a task and they fail at it, more than likely it is because you have failed to set expectations and understanding and properly train, right? And there's always an aspect where that person just blows you off and blah, blah, blah. We can get into that. But those, I would argue, are more one-offs than the norm. I think the norm is, as leaders, we do not think through the whole process enough and explain enough so that our team members can be set up for success. So going back to delegation, the important thing to realize is that you are not the expert, okay, in all things. You may be a really good accountant, right? You may be an expert at tax law and know all the ins and outs and the history of the IRS, or you were a former IRS auditor, right? So you know a lot of the inside stuff. But that does not make you a good leader. That does not make you a good office manager. That does not make you a good HR person, or even a good guy or gal. That just makes you an expert, a technical expert at your field. And we certainly talked about this at length before with being a technical expert. But I wanted to help you understand that while you may be an expert in that 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 areas, there are so many more that we are not, and we need to be able to find those team members to do that. Now, there is a flip side to this coin, all right? So the flip side is, certainly when it comes to building a business, building a brand, building your social authority on whatever it is that you do, okay, especially if you're in the solopreneur area, is delegating cannot be used as a method to skirt your responsibility to your investors, your responsibility to your business, your responsibility to your customers. You can't prematurely step outside of that role where it is your responsibility and your authority is the one who needs to be held accountable to make sure things happen, okay? And certainly on the extreme sense, some people would argue that I don't delegate to anybody. And while I understand the thought process behind that, because you're the one that drives the business. It was your idea. You're the one that has all the creativity of where you want this business to go and everything. The reality is you need team members, and at some point you have to delegate to them. So I want to highly encourage you, if you are that type of person that is, I'm going to do everything myself. I'm the only one who has the vision. I'm the only one who has the expertise. I'm the only one who, knows my customers once or knows what's failed in the past. That you're not doing a good job of setting yourself up for long-term failure. You may be setting yourself up for phenomenal short-term gains, right? Like being able to talk sweetly and smooth that customer right off the bat, especially those big clients, because you are an expert, because you can answer every single question they could possibly ever have about the minute details of your product or your service, immediately and on the fly. That may earn their trust and respect and business, but ultimately you can't be that to every customer, and you have to set up a way with your team that they have the authority to speak on your behalf. And certainly a training program may be involved in that. All right. So this is kind of a shorter one because it was mainly in response to the comment of unwilling to allow for mistakes. as you've delegated things to your team members, right? Because certainly they're not you. They will make mistakes. Just like, hey, guess what? You made mistakes in the early start parts of this process. Okay, so you need to give that grace and that understanding, and that certainly should go into your planning and how you think about the best way to move forward and get team members on your side, and how much you're willing to delegate to them, right? And certainly an incremental process would probably be wise, right? Small responsibility garners small trust, and then you just kind of move that down the line into larger and larger as they've shown faithful and trustworthy, as you've verified their results. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. Delegation, certainly important to hold a lot of the cards as you're growing, because it is you're building it on your shoulders, whatever that business may be. But as you grow and as your time starts to become more and more valuable because there's more demands on it, you have to be able to come up with a way to delegate. And I would caution you that you don't get into this delegation mode and this way of finding teammates you can trust as purely reactionary out of necessity, but you start thinking about that as part of your groundwork overall of where you want your business to go, because that can really keep you out of trouble and keep your business actually on a steadily climbing vertical versus a huge spike and then a massive crash at the end because you didn't have any sort of systems or processes in place to find those right teammates and ultimately trust them as you all grow together. All right, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have any questions, comments, and concerns, please shoot me an email at kale@kalehouserleadership.com. I certainly would be eager to discuss them with you. Thank you for supporting the channel. Like I said, we got a couple really great guest speakers lined up over the next couple days, and you should be hearing from them over the next week or two. I can't wait to share their perspectives with you. Hey, have a fantastic afternoon, no matter where you are at in the world. Bye.